Multi-generational Building Committee. We're going to have to shorten that to order. What time is it? 6:40? 6:48?
49.
6:49. Okay, let's have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Nigerian? Here. Mr. Punchak?
Here.
Ms. Tebow?
Here.
Mr. Porter?
Here.
Ms. Paulus?
Here.
And the secretary is here.
That's good. Okay, at this time, we'll have a time for public comment, if anybody wants to. Ann? We have one public. Yeah. Okay, all right. So at this time, now that we've been called to order and we've had no public comment, I'm going to turn this over to Jeff to introduce our guests.
Sure, great. Thank you all for being here this evening at our kickoff meeting for the multi-generational building here. With us this evening, we have BH+A, the architects who have worked on the Halliwell master plan as well as the Scouters Hall assessment. I just want to give everybody a refresh that what a master plan is this evening. It's just acting as a roadmap for the property. It's getting us from point A to point B. We can always make some adjustments here or there as we move forward, just based off the needs and wants of the town as we and the council see fit. And part of continuing to take in public comment and questions and opinions, we can certainly continue to do that. So on our agenda, we have a few items to review with BH+A. We have the master plan review, if you guys just want to give us a high-level review, schedule and project cost, and then our official kickoff for schematic design and kind of giving us a walkthrough of the documentation process. So with that, I'll turn that over to Joel Bargman of BH+A.
Well, thanks. This is Jeremy. Jeremy's been behind a lot of the drawings that we...
It would be great if you could
Yeah.
use the microphone.
Yeah, we are.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you could use the microphone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't bring slides because, as you remember the last time, everything was out and it was such a hassle. I brought prints tonight. But Jeremy's been with us doing a lot of the drawings that went in the book, but he's also just finished the Sudbury Community Senior Center, the Westboro Community Center, which we just finished the drawings. It's ready to go out to bid, and he's done a number of similar projects before that in the office. So he's got a lot of current information, knows how to put a set of working drawings together, so he's going to be a great asset to the team. And I wanted him to see the site and get started and introduced to you all so that we can get a good dialogue going. We have a handout because I just figured it was maybe good to pull out the drawings and get them up to speed for where I think we left off. That we took sort of the master plan, floor plan that we had identified between the two projects that we studied, a 6,800 square foot program. So I wanted to just get on paper exactly what that 6,800 square foot looks like so you could see what is there. That doesn't mean these are the rooms that have to go in there, but when we were doing the master plan, as you recall, we started with a larger program, and then we did a series of iterations all the way down to a 3,200 square foot version, and these were the rooms that were in that 6,800 square foot option. So I thought, no, this is a good way to sort of start on the program and what might be in the project. So the heart of that drawing is a multi-purpose room that it's not unlike this, but much larger. It's 2,000 square feet. And in the third point of that room is a partition that's acoustically sound. When it closes, you can't hear from one side to the other. So you can make out of that one room two smaller rooms, and that's really effective in terms of programming and you know, you can set up one room, have the other room set up for lunch, go back and have a program in the other room after lunch. You get a lot of flexibility out of that with that movable partition. The other program that we had in there was to have one adjustable, like classroom type space, and we call it a flex program because it has a floor that sort of looks like a wood floor. It's actually a vinyl floor, but it's a cushioned floor. So if you want to have a dance class, if you want to have a yoga class, you can do that in there. If you want to put tables and chairs on there, you can do it, not worry about scratching the floor. So it's a kind of, it's very popular in a lot of programs because, you know, they don't necessarily need a whole nother classroom, or they don't need a whole nother dance studio, and that gives you 2-for-1 kind of thing. At the top end of the plan is something to talk about. It's a sort of activity space. We tend to call them games room, but it's an activity space. It could be, doesn't have to be that, it could be another program space, but we're showing just for size what a 9-foot pool table would look like in that room and what 2 card tables are. Some centers like yours set that up all for cards, and Mahjong is really popular and getting pretty wild these days, so it's got a door on that room because the blocks from the games make some noise. So that could be both and. We're showing 2 card tables. You could actually get 3 card tables in there and a pool table. You could have 2 pool tables, you could have more card tables, whatever you want, but it's 600 square feet in size, and the reason that we did show a billiard pool table is that in a lot of the communities that we're working in, the pool is, everybody initially says, well, why do you want pool? And then they go to visit some centers and they see, well, that's where the men hang out, and that does bring a different group in, and kids like to use it as well. And what is really nice is like the project that we were just working on, Westboro and the surrounding communities have developed a team, and they go from one center to the other, and it takes up an afternoon or a morning. It's a lot of fun. So we just drawing those ideas to show you what can be. Then as I go down now clockwise to 1 o'clock on the plan, there's a conference room. What the idea on that is that it works for some limited staff that might be in the building, so this could be an administrative space. But it's also really nice for if you have, as this building develops, you maybe have a more robust senior center committee, and they can meet there. So different boards can rent that room or use that room if they're town boards, or if the scouts want to rent a room for a night for a board meeting. That gets to be a lot of use in these types of buildings. And that small conference room can also be, like if you have a current events club as part of the senior program, or there's a, you know, any type of discussion group. You know, you don't really want to be in a big classroom. You might want to have a smaller, intimate setting. So that room gets set up with a nice table, but it also has screens. So if you want to go online with another center and have a conversation with a group down in Johnston, or you know, someone in Providence, it's an interactive room, so you could go online with educational facility and have a seminar. You could broadcast to folks that are at home a program. It can be used anyway, but the idea is that it's a conference room that's set up with audio, visual, and sound capabilities, so you can really extend your services. And part of what the pandemic was really interesting in terms of how many more people began using the senior centers, even though the senior centers were closed, because our clients that we work with really learned how to use the technology. And then after the pandemic, they continued using that technology, so people that are homebound might be able to use certain other programs. And
That's right.
it's been really interesting. So for not a huge amount of cost to put a widescreen TV and a sound system in a room, you can really gain on your usage within the community, and then it allows you to connect to other groups. And then I know that, you know, we talked about the office space, and
Don't need
the
that
thought
much.
was that as this place grows, it would become probably a more, I think you have some of this half-time. I'm trying to remember from the master plan, but we assumed that there would be a full-time staff dedicated to this, and then we wanted to have some opportunities to grow or have a flex office. So there's 2 offices in there, and what the flex office does is that can be where a visiting lawyer comes in and has a program for, you know, wills, or an accountant can come in and have a program on tax this time of year. We get in our other projects, people come in and work on Medicare. When you sign up in the fall for those programs, it's good to have a specialist come in and help folks decide on what they want to do, and when they want to do it. Is it best, you know, 65, 72, all those options that folks have to think about. So that second office is really for many different programs, and in fact, if you wanted to have a blood pressure clinic, the nurse could set up in there and bring folks in. If, you know, it can be used in many different ways. And then there's a reception point in the front of that building. So one of the things we'll have to do is decide, you know, how sophisticated of reception control you want to have in the building, and how do you want to register folks in. And a lot of our buildings, they'll have, as you come in, a computer, and you don't pay to come in, but it's really
Sign
great
in.
to have a list of who enters the building, because when you have that list at the end of the year, and then you go to groups for funding, and you have, this is how many people use the building, this is how many unique visitors we have, it's a great database to help support funds and
Yeah.
grants.
It's called My Senior Center.
Pardon me?
The program is called My Senior Center.
Well, I
And
was
it
going to
tracks
say that, but
everybody
I
that
wasn't
comes
sure
in.
if you were using that one,
No,
yeah.
we are, yeah.
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 So we set that up right in the lobby there. And the reason the lobby is somewhat large is that if you have a real big program going on in the multipurpose room, you need that queuing space out there and gathering. And there's a kitchen that we'll really have to design well, because it's not a huge kitchen, but it's designed to be a commercial kitchen with a pantry and a cooler. The intent is that once you have a pantry and a cooler, you can buy more bulk materials, and then you can get them less expensive. And there are certain programs that if you have the bulk storage opportunity, you'll be eligible. In certain circumstances, folks are eligible for grants as long as they can prove that they can store large amounts as opposed to small amounts. And then, of course, we have a restroom, and on the women's side, there's 4 fixtures, so that's a lot. But again, if you have a program in the multipurpose room and then it breaks, you know, you want to support the surge requirement, not necessarily the everyday requirement. So that was sort of the program that we had, and then Jeremy and I refined it and got the areas sort of adjusted every little bit so that it comes out to exactly that 6,800 square feet. And as Jeff alluded to, you know, master plan is a roadmap of what can be. It doesn't have to be this configuration. It happens to be efficient, but we can, you know, can be a lot of different things. Sometimes what we do is we start with, you know, something like that, and then the committee will ask us to do 2 other alternatives just to see what the alternatives can be, and then those alternatives do help you think outside the box to how it could be configured differently. Or you can say, you know, we spent a year on the two buildings in the
Mm-hmm.
master planning phase. You like the layout, and that's what happened in a project in Reading that we were recently working on, that we spent so much time on the feasibility study that we just dumped right into with where we left off. And the advantage of that is the building was able to be designed in 3 months' time and get, inflation is hurting our budgets, so the faster you can go,
Course
the
it
more
is.
you can save. So the whole idea on that project was, let's go quickly and get it out there. Just so you had some sense of the appearance of the building, we hadn't really given you elevations, so these are just, this is the entry elevation, so there's a covered entry coming into the building that leads you to the lobby. That box in the middle is the entry vestibule that sort of marks the entry. The gist of the building, and what's really nice about, if you went to the next page, a one-story building gives you the opportunity for the multipurpose room to have its own ceiling. In many of our senior centers, the multipurpose room's on the first floor of a two-story building, and it's constrained by the floor-to-floor ceiling height. But with Halliwell, the site and the building, that community room that's almost twice as long as this room, it's not quite as wide, can have a nice high ceiling, but it can also have a roof to it. It could have a pitched roof, and so it could have wood trusses that define the space, and that could be quite nice as a room. And I think that since the building's small, and since the heart of the room is this multipurpose room, we were sort of hoping that we could, really, that would be the room that would be the signature room, that could be used by the scouts at night and other groups. And so we would, have that with a nice high ceiling, nice open wood truss ceiling, make it a special room that people would love for the next 50 or more years, and not make it too institutional. So what the drawing is showing, there's something called a section. It's just showing a cross-section with more traditional roofs, so they're symmetrical gable roofs. We can study this, and it could be a more modern, contemporary angled roof, which is we showed on the renderings earlier. So the purpose of tonight was saying, see, you can show different alternatives. It doesn't have to be exactly the way that we looked at it. And then I think the thing that we really want to dive into, and I didn't in advance of tonight because we sort of got we had seen a couple emails talking about the site development, but we had a very made a very diagrammatic summary of where we ended up the building on the existing site, which that area has been cleared and is a nice economical area, and it doesn't put the building in the middle of the site, so it's great. The building could grow over time, but it's not inhibiting what you might want to do on the site in the future. If you put it in the middle, it's sort of forever people are going to say, why'd they put the building in the middle of the site? The idea was to put it off to the side, and then we could decide. But we'd heard sort of maybe there might be some additional field considerations on here, so I didn't go. And that's the next phase we need to get to, is get our civil engineers in here.
Thanks, Mark.
When they didn't pay the electric bill.
So that's sort of as far as we've gotten. And maybe, I hope that sort of shows you where we're at and where we can go from here.
It sure does. I know three of us have been pretty intimately involved in the layout of the building and in the floor planning and everything. So I did want to give Mrs. Tebow, Mr. Punchak, Ms. Paulus an opportunity to make some comments as well on the floor plan. And not to preclude the former Halliwell Review Committee, but I do want to give you guys, also give you the opportunity to speak about the plan.
Oh, is the STG, does that stand for storage? That is storage?
That's correct, yeah.
That's storage, yeah, because that's important, it really is, yeah. You know, I like the idea that the offices can be used for different things, but I'm not sure that we need two of them. You know, it's been my experience that, you know, yes, you know, I mean, I'm the nurse, I do blood pressures once a week. But other than that, you know, people could use it, like, you know, and we do have attorneys that come in and do legal aid, you know, and things like that, and, or a podiatrist coming in. But I don't know that we need two of them.
I thought there might be an administrator that when this building got
Well,
going.
and you know, I think too, you know, most senior centers that I've been in, and I don't know about Westboro, my daughter lives in Southborough, right there, but they don't have a big staff. You know, there's usually the director, and
Well,
if
that's
there,
what the office is for,
yeah,
the
one,
director.
yeah, one, but it's never like woo, you know. Where most of the senior centers are kind of lean, you know.
Well, it's 100 square feet, that's
Yeah.
not a big office.
And,
yeah.
and so you might have something like that, and then, you know, the ones that are municipal, so they don't even need a finance director, you know, so usually it's just maybe a janitor, director, and most senior centers don't even have a nurse, so, yeah, I'd wonder about that. I'd wonder
Yeah.
that we need all of that, plus a receptionist, you know, a reception area.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
The reception really was a question. I thought that
Yeah.
there would probably, if not now, when this thing really gets going,
Yeah.
it may
Yeah.
have an
Yeah,
administrator.
but I think if you're going to have truly multifunctional purpose, you will need the reception area because you've got different groups coming in. And if you were to eliminate that office, it's awkward. You don't really net too much productivity. Two quick questions. One was if you could explain which direction, quote, remember the building blocks of the phases, which direction would phase two go if it were ever to occur? And we had spent significant time talking about the food pantry.
Yeah,
Were you able or not able?
well, we could, hadn't been drawn in the 6,800 square feet, so if we had the food pantry in, there's a couple ways to do it, but it would probably take some space out of the 6,800 square feet. And then, so just, it's a great question. The multi-purpose room has these big doors or windows, and that opens out to the field. So that's the view and the nice, this is the side where the building would expand, and that's why the lobby, you could really build that other building and you connect through the lobby. So it's, you wouldn't have to close this building necessarily to do the addition.
And just to clarify, the quote cafe lounge really has a significant potential functionality to it because it gives that comfort of you just can come in at your leisure and just sit, read the paper if you want with your friend, have a cup of coffee, whatever, and you don't necessarily have to be attending an event.
Yeah, exactly. And it, that's why those tables are there in the, I have some nice pictures from Wellesley. They have this kind of a setup, and people come and play cards or just have, like you say, it's a more casual space, and it's a drop-in space.
May I just say, though, you know, this cafe lounge, many senior centers, at least in Rhode Island, are congregate meal sites or community table sites, and so you do need an area that is like a really dining area, and it's right off the kitchen. And, you know, usually that's done through a 3C grant, federal grant.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that was a long time ago, you know, but that's why I said I like that part, because it is right off the kitchen.
Yeah. So it can work that way, but the kitchen also can serve here, so if you wanted to.
Oh, it doesn't go that way at all? No, it doesn't.
It can go both
It
ways.
doesn't. It goes-
That's why it was put on
Yeah.
the lobby. There's a window pass-through here to the lobby, and then there's a pass-through to the multipurpose room. So if you want a bigger congregate lunch, you can do it in here.
But couldn't you also, if you chose to, flip-flop the game and the kitchen?
Yeah.
I know from a plumbing point of view, you'd rather have the plumbing fixtures close by, but
the game room could become the kitchen, which puts it right next to the flex room, which could serve as the multifunctional dining area.
Yep.
You still have, the plumbing costs would be a little bit on the design side, because, but that's another option, I would think.
The, if you did want the food pantry, then the question would be how large is it? Most of our food pantries have a separate entry, so we might want to put it at the end of this hallway so you could get to it from the building, but generally, and I don't, it's nice to be able to go in and get your groceries and then put them in the car and then go into the building. You don't have to know, everybody doesn't have to know if you use the food pantry or not.
I mean, I would think that at some point, this would have to be a question to the council as to what is it that we are prioritizing? Clearly, the food pantry is an ongoing need, and you would think that if you're gonna build a municipal building, you would take the burden, not the burden, but you take the task of administrating it away from the church that so kindly donates. So I think at some point, the council would need to prioritize how valuable each square footage, each square foot of building is, and what purpose they would want it to serve.
And I think we would also want to continue the discussions with the folks that are running the food pantry too. So that way we can identify exactly space needs, requirements. Because I know right now they have at least 6 or 7 different fridges and then 3 or 4 different freezers and they're all residential sized appliances all in a row to store whatever perishables they do have, so.
Takes up a lot of room to have a food pantry. Lots of room,
Yeah,
because they have shelves and shelves and shelves with the food.
Yes.
I mean,
A
you're
lot of
right.
room.
In Situate, next to the senior center, it's a 2,000 square foot food pantry. I mean, it's just, it happened to be there in an empty school, but
Yeah.
and they can fill it. And then the other consideration, which a lot of folks are getting away from, is the medical equipment like wheelchairs and that, and
That is so not good.
exactly, that's what folks are.
Liability attached with that. Even in this town, Stephen Provost, who's the senior advocate on the fire department, they used to have equipment that they could hand out, and they've stopped doing it. And I know it was broached at the senior center where I am, and, the liability, the maintenance, the cleaning of that equipment, and then handing it out. Let me count the ways why it's not a good idea.
I can't agree with you more, that the equipment comes in, and then the director has to clean the equipment, and it happens at the front door of the building.
That's right, and if it's not adjusted properly, or if there's a mechanical issue and someone gets hurt, because, you just don't hand out walkers and crutches and things. You've got to make sure they're fitted properly for the person that's receiving. And are we going to have a nurse or somebody that's knowledgeable about those things? It's costly.
Yeah.
That's costly to have a nurse.
But-
I work for missionary work myself. But, yeah, it's tough.
I'd say one thing about the food pantry is that can be a less costly building or room than the rest of the space. You don't necessarily have to air condition it, you want to heat it, but, and it doesn't have to be fully furnished. So a lot of, ones we see that are quite nice are like sort of heated garages, insulated, but not highly finished.
Mm.
In
Joanne.
the multi-purpose room, so your demountable partition, if you've got exposed wooden trusses, you're kind of losing your acoustic performance with that demountable partition, because what are you going to do above it?
That's a great point. The center truss gets filled in, so you end up having sort of 2 halves, so that,
And then the storage for that room is extremely expensive storage if that's all foundation underneath those. I would say we want to,
yeah.
it looks nice, but, we can just make a straight wall and have 2 corners instead of 12 or however many are there. And then the Is it just a window, or is that like a roll-up door that would actually open the space up to outside?
The committee had asked for doors that roll up, so we actually had a rendering, I didn't bring it, but that was the idea, that you could open up to the outside and then there could be the community
Yeah.
garden if you wanted.
In the flex room too, or just the,
You could do that in the flex room, yeah.
I don't know what you would want.
That's,
in
we're
the
showing
flex
it that way in the flex room.
room. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Punchak, so one of the things that we were looking at previously with the master plan is that, so this opens up and you're looking down at the fields, the big oak tree. So one of the things that we had talked about was creating a larger patio space on the side of that multi-purpose room, and that essentially doubles the size. Now, if you're, a nice spring day, you have everything opened up, you can have people traversing back and forth, and basically doubles the size of the multi-purpose room. So you can really have, music outside or, a band inside playing, people can be outside dancing on the patio. So then that way, the sound is aimed out towards the big oak tree. So that was one of the reasonings why we had requested having that opening up.
No, I think that's a great idea.
That's a good idea.
Definitely like that idea.
I have a question.
Talk into the mic, too. Yeah,
Is it on?
yeah.
It's on, you got it on.
So, as I'm looking at this picture, and then I get to the back page and I look at the way it's set in the grass and in the whole area, the people have to literally walk from the parking
Right.
lot all the way to the
Right.
door, way on the other side? The entrance is all the way over here?
The entrance is right at that white spot.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
we
what is
could
it-
bring the parking lot closer to the building, I was looking at that.
So that's your point of entry right there. So you're coming from the parking lot
Okay.
down this way,
Okay.
up into here.
So wouldn't it be better if the building was turned around the other way? If the office and all this stuff was on this side and that was on this side?
I think for future expansion,
Yeah, so the reasoning why it's laid out the way it is, so if ever the town decides to expand and put more building,
Okay,
they're able to go right off the cafe lounge space this way,
got you.
and they have more space.
Okay,
When we start building that way, we start dealing with grades,
okay.
and it gets a little bit more difficult,
All right,
if that makes sense.
makes a lot of sense.
Perfect.
Okay.
I
So
thought the
that-
windows were nice, because in the community outreach, everybody had such recollections of the school and the tree and the field, and it was nice that the building could open up
To look at the
in
tree.
that direction as opposed to turning it the other way.
So that door is where though?
So you have two
That-
doors here,
yeah.
and then these are the overhead doors that would open up.
So that if you want people to sign in, they have to walk all the way through the building to get over to here?
No, you'd still walk through
You s-
here.
So there's, I'm lost. There's a,
No, you're fine. Plans are tricky. So if you're having an event in the multipurpose room, you'd come from the parking lot, you'd go through here, and then you'd walk out into the multipurpose room here.
It's a good exercise to walk.
And then this would be where the patio is
I
over
don't
here.
think we have enough
So
bathrooms.
if there's like a really big event going on,
I'm
you
coming
technically
six.
could just walk over here, but that might not be a time where we're tracking visitors
How
coming
many
in.
bathrooms?
gotcha.
Pardon me?
How many bathrooms?
There's
That doesn't look
four-
like enough.
four women's stalls and 3 men with 1 urinal. It's sort of more than the building
That's
needs,
what,
but we designed it for the peak load of the multipurpose room.
okay. I'm used to lots of bathrooms in senior centers,
Well,
more than that, yeah.
yeah.
But you figured it out, and that's enough. Everybody's on diuretics and running to the back.
There was one, and I don't remember if we show it now or not.
There isn't.
It's a good point, yeah. Speaking of the family bathrooms, in a number of our community centers, they don't have common bathrooms. It's all private family bathrooms.
A lot of.
And they're
yeah,
all handicapped accessible, and,
Yeah,
well, not all of them have changing tables, but some.
yeah.
So by code, how
By-
many restrooms do we need?
That's what I'm,
I think
I guess
the-
that was my question.
The code
yeah.
was we could get by with 3.
3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Say that again?
But the code would require only 3,
3?
yeah. And you could actually get by with 2, but it doesn't, practically it doesn't work because that would have no urinals in the men's. So when you add the urinal, you have 2 stalls, and then you have 3 women's stalls. But
Wow.
we put 4 in just because
Wow.
I didn't think that was
Gee,
enough.
we're in an old building, we have 8.
But, yeah.
8 up on one floor and then another,
Well, it's a small
3,
building.
huh?
At 18,000 square foot, we'll have 8
yeah.
stalls.
Because, I mean, you know, really, 3, huh?
Well, you have 4.
4. Yeah, no,
I think
but I'm
I
saying
think it'll
3
be
is
enough
enough.
because on a day-to-day basis,
No, I'm just,
you'll.
you know, you get a room full of seniors and they're all on diuretic. Watch out.
Well, that's what
And
we're
many
here
of them
for.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, I mean, from a construction point of view, the bathroom per square foot is
the most expensive.
very high. So, I mean, you have to really think it through. If economy of scale is going to enter into the picture, the bathrooms are extraordinarily expensive relative to a square footage of the multipurpose room, for example, so.
No, I just wonder, like, how many people can be in this room? You know, what's the capacity, people capacity, sitting, standing in these rooms? And, you know, like, if you have an event, we've had events where we had 200 people, you know, at an annual veterans dinner, you know, so
Yeah.
you could have a
So,
We can always get porta johns.
porta johns and put them outside. We have enough outside. No, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
no,
just-
it's a
just the-
great question because, you know, just coming from a meeting last night where they said, why do we need 8 stalls? And
Yeah.
Well, didn't you say that you, quote, designed it for surge?
we designed this one for the multipurpose room, so that,
Which would be
Yeah.
And
maximum capacity.
Yeah.
yeah, and you don't usually have your full multipurpose room going and the flex room at the same time. So what we did was say
I get you.
125 people in the multipurpose room. It could be more than that, but,
Well, just food for thought.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of what dictates how many stalls we have, how many, mostly stalls, is dictated based off code requirements for, there's so many square feet per person. So like, for a multipurpose room, you could be working off of code for 7 square feet per occupant or 5 square foot per occupant. And, you know, that puts us at anywhere between 285 to 400 people.
That-
Granted, we
This
know
big
that.
room.
That big room.
That big room, yeah.
Granted, we know that that's not going to be a likely scenario because we're going to have chairs and furniture and we have to
Right.
maintain egress
Yeah.
paths and so forth. So, you know, those numbers are just dictated based off code, which then informs how many restrooms, how many
Per.
points of
Yeah.
egress we need.
Okay.
So, when Joel and Jeremy are doing all their calculations, there's all these numbers that are dictated just by code, so that's what we kind of use a baseline, and
Okay.
then, obviously, with their experience, they certainly know how many people can actually fit in all these different rooms, too.
May I ask a question, or a couple of questions?
You
Of
sure-
course you
You're part of this committee, Mark.
I hate to be the stick in the mud, but, Joel, I was looking in the master plan, and this isn't, it's not a big variance, but in the master plan, the building's 6,600 square feet. This is 6,800 square feet.
I thought that the vote said 6,800, so that's.
I don't know what the vote said. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
So what is the value of this building?
I don't
Cost.
remember. The 68 or 66, that number was the value of this building and the site was the appropriation. I don't remember exactly what that number was. But that's how we got to that number, that was the appropriation. You went
There
plus-
is no appropriation.
For, Mark, back with the cost breakout, the 6,600 square foot was estimated total project cost, not construction cost, was $5.989 million.
Yeah.
Yep,
Right. That was
for the 6,600 square
in the
foot.
old report. Was that updated? I thought that was updated.
I don't
But let's say it's 5.9. Let's
Yeah.
just say, let's round it to 6.
Yeah, I looked at it.
So currently, the town has 4 million, right?
Yep.
We're aware of that. So is this building scalable so that, should we not be able to come up with the additional $2 million, would this building be able to be scaled down to something that would fit the town's budget?
Yeah, the building sort of was configured with that idea that if you, and it was sort of hierarchically, that you could lose the game room,
Okay.
you could lose the conference room, you'd still want the multi-purpose room and a flex room.
Right, right.
If you
So,
go-
so Joel, you could take those pods off?
Yeah.
Right,
And
Mark.
yeah.
That's why they were arranged the way they were.
Yeah,
because
that's-
these are the least important to the most important.
I just-
You gotta have the bathrooms, you gotta have the kitchen, you gotta have.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I just want to draw that out of you so that we
Yeah.
have an understanding that as the building, in this configuration as it's designed, it's not going to take a Herculean effort, should the budget be 5 million,
Right.
to
So-
start to scale that back.
Mark, one of the things that I had explained to the council previously as well was that once we get into design development and costs are further refined, if we need to draw a line for add alternates, such as the line of game room, conference room.
Yeah.
To cut out the square footage, we can still include that in the documentation when it goes out to bid.
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course,
But
yeah.
then, if the add alternate comes in and everything's hunky-dory with the budget, and
Yeah.
we can award that add alternate. If we find that it's not feasible,
No, I
then
understand.
we lob that off.
Yeah, I understood. Another question, Joel, when you're doing this layout, and I like that you had this little schematic on the back, that's nice. Gives you a good idea of how you are proposing to orient that. We're aware, you're aware, that there's substantial wetlands on this site, and in reading your report, it's likely going to require variances from DEM. So, to me, I think it's appropriate that while we're looking at the schematic for the building, and this is generally a decent layout, that the initial work should be more towards engineering the site and getting a permit before DEM. DEM permit with variances could take in excess of a year to be issued.
What variances do you think we would need?
Well, setbacks, I can tell you what they are. So the wetland, the edge of the wetland is delineated on a separate plan. So then, under the new regulations, the setback from that is 100 feet plus 25 feet for construction. So the building and the parking lot are actually in the setback, in the buffer.
Not the building.
Well, I'm not sure on that. I can't tell by the site plan.
I thought
By
the
this site
building-
plan, which was done by PAR, it is.
I think we moved the building, I have to.
Yeah, so-
The intent was we moved the building over to that property line to get it out of the wetland.
Yeah, so my general question is, wouldn't it behoove us to be moving forward with that simultaneously and not waiting for that?
That-
And starting to do site design and engineering? The blue is the wetland, and the yellow is the buffer, the setback. That's the jurisdictional area. But this is the setback, the yellow is the setback, so anything within the setback, they have to review.
Get the permits first.
That's the setback that they review, yeah. So no, it's not. But all I'm saying is that we should be looking at engineering early on rather than later, because
Yeah,
regardless, the permitting through DEM is the permitting through DEM. And anyone who's ever gone through DEM, believe me, it could just stall the project for quite some time. So I'm thinking, while you're doing, this work here is, I think, sufficient to have the is PAR, I think, is going to be the engineer of record, right?
yeah, yeah.
Just to have them start laying up, superimposing the wetland in the setback, reaching out to DEM and having a conversation with them to see what level of permit we're going to be requiring. Because if you're going to need variances, and I don't know that you are or aren't, we need to get those out up front, because that could just stall the whole project. Just want to draw that out too.
So the schedule had that process
You can take that, looks like it too.
of,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm imagining you must have prioritized it, because
we
you
had gotten that started right.
deal with this all the time.
Yeah, you don't,
So we had planned on that,
they show it, I mean, we should, if it's a question that we need to pass up to the council, then they should
we
be
have
asked
to
to
do
authorize this
that.
investigative work
Yeah.
and permitting ASAP so that we
Absolutely.
don't get caught.
I'm just saying, so, you know, new regulations at DEM, you've got a substantial wetland, you just can't dump this water into the wetland. There has to be some mitigation, whether it be underground infiltration, which I doubt we're going to do here because the cost of that would be way out of the budget. So you're probably going to have some kind of a retention pond to catch the water and then send that into the wetland. And where's that pond going to go on the site? So
There wa-
Very good points, because DEM is
Yeah, right.
brutal.
But that could be one of the way to bring recommendations to the council. And
I
we
think-
should probably do that pronto
I think
so we can get
running a
going.
dual track here and
Yeah.
having Paul working along with you guys simultaneously to get that, because otherwise, I did see the timeline. The DEM permit is not going to allow that timeline, even if it's an insignificant alteration.
Yeah, that takes time.
Well, maybe we can move that you guys come back and give us prioritize how quickly you can file.
I think we gotta talk to DEM before we really.
Well, I
go
think
too
PAR,
far.
if you read the, if
We
you
need to bring that to the council.
if you look at, Joel's report,
Get the vote to do that.
it says an application for freshwater wetlands permit with variances is anticipated to be required due to the proposed improvements within jurisdictional area. Pre-application meeting with RIDEM is recommended to discuss wetlands impacts and propose mitigation and solicit feedback from RIDEM. That's in the report.
Can I see,
Right, so
is that site plan?
We would typically do that. We don't, I don't think we need approval from council to do that.
I just don't want to get far along, you get into
Right.
June, July, and you find out, wait a minute.
This is part of the documentation process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is all normal parts of an architectural
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
that we have been tasked to do. This is nothing, this process is not new to any particular project that myself, Jeremy, or Joel has gone through. So, while yes, it's a well-taken point, and I agree with Mark that we should get started on that portion of the project. I know a lot of times civil engineers will be 3 steps ahead of what we're doing architecturally. So, I think we can just say, continue going as it's outlined in the contract, and we'll get that moving.
Do we need a motion for the council to approve that? Because that involves money, doesn't it? Everything involves
Well, we're
money.
under contract for that.
Yeah, we're under contract.
It's
for
part
this
of
whole
your
process.
contract to
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
So we don't need the approval of the
No.
council to get going?
If we start telling them to,
Do what you
design
Okay.
a skyscraper, and that's a
Okay.
change of scope of
So you
work.
know what you have to do then?
We've been through it with PAR before on, we did that salty brine bathhouse that's on the ocean. So that, very complicated.
Okay,
Oh,
all right.
Could I get a clarification? I just want to make sure everybody, we all understand what it is we're doing. This presentation here, which is, what is the next step? And given that the 6,800 we know represents more than we have, what is the premise? Are we going to design to what we want? Because I'm just concerned, if we analyze this floor plan, come back with 1 or 2 iterations and revisions, and this committee says, okay, fine, we like it, what is the council expecting? Are they expecting, because we all know that evil 2 million is always going to be here, and the design is here. So at what point, so that we're not chasing our tails, does the council say, this is what we would like, start designing it, and this committee will try to find the 2 million? Because I would hate to go through all of this and then get to the council and they get bounced around on the political spectrum and they say, no, do 4,000. You know, you gotta go back, we're wasting money, we're wasting time. So I just wanna get a sense, where are we? Are we 6,800, design it and try to get the money? Or are we someplace else?
We're also gonna have our points where, at the end of each phase, I would be expecting that we get a cost opinion on where we stand. So at the end of our schematic design, we're gonna get a pulse check. We're here. And that's, you know, closer to the $4 million, closer to the $6 million, or God, hope not, with everything that's going on in the country right now, that we're even further. So I think during these phases, I think we keep our eye on the ball right now. We know that we are limited. However, we also need to move things forward. We have our master plan. We've had discussion about the plans this evening, about taking things, potentially drawing some delineations between some rooms that may or may not be needed. And then we can, you know, at the next meeting, look at our iterations that we have. And then once we decide on a plan, we can have BH+A do their pulse check on the budget. And also know that in the background, Mrs. Tebow and I have had meetings with our town administrator, Scott Gibbs, and he is actively looking to fill that gap right now. There are CDBG grants that he's looking to apply for, and other additional funds that are going to be requested from our congressional leaders. So know that closing that gap, and I don't want to speak for the administration, but it is a priority for them. And Mark, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen a lot of action to continue supporting these efforts.
Yeah, so the administration is in the process of working on an application for a federal appropriation, whether, you know, the state of federal government today, who knows what would happen with that. We also have the grant writer, G&G. They are working on a CDBG grant application. And I was told today, I didn't know this, I thought the cap on the CDBG grants this year was $500,000. There's no cap. So the administrator and I spoke very late this afternoon. I informed him of that. He reached out to G&G right away. So I think rather than a $500,000 application, we'll be looking for $1 million, right? So, but that's a good question, Bob, and that was why I asked the question earlier, and the administrator and I have actually had this. I had the exact conversation you just had with the administrator. I said, what are we doing? We don't want to design a building and then be told that's not the building that you can build. And, you know, I'm not going on fool's errands and wasting my time. So that's why I'm asking if it's scalable. So at this point, you know, those conversations can happen as a council member here. You know, David could certainly bring that message back to the council and have that conversation. I would say, we're moving forward with this design as you have, making sure it's scalable to a point, right? It's going to be scalable to a point, and then there's going to be fish or cut bait, as my mother used to say. And I think you definitely need to run simultaneously working on the site plan and getting that permitting underway so that this project is ready to go. And when it is ready to go, as Jeff was saying, you know, you've got add alternates in your bid specs when you put them out, and then you build to the budget that you have at that time. I mean, that's the best you can do, I would think.
Other question I had quickly is, at some point, do we want input as to the exterior elevations and design components so we can get a better understanding of their premise and their vision and how it relates to cost and any savings that may be had by changing products or changing looks? Because the two are, you know, the functionality of the space is lockstep with the visual impact that it makes. And so that's a very significant conversation that we have to have at some point in the near future to make sure we understand their premise and the methodology and whether or not there are reasonable savings that can be had without infringing on the design intent. So,
For example, Bob, the back of the building can be uglier than the front.
Yes.
well, when we're talking about the square footage of the conference room versus whether the veneer is
the facade,
is this or that, then it becomes irrelevant.
It does. It's very relevant.
Point.
Yeah.
The other equation.
Do you think we should get going and check in with the council and ask that question before we go full steam ahead? Or I mean, I do think,
I think Councilman Bunchak has
well, I
it.
know.
I
Well,
think- so-
and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to ask him
Here's,
that.
here's what I think
All right.
needs to happen. I think a story needs to be told. The story of how this building is going to function, some of the things that, you know, people are actually going to do in this building. Because right now, you know, 2,000 square foot multi-purpose flex program, every time you refer to it, Linda, you refer to it as a senior center,
I
even
do.
though,
I
even
do.
though it's
Well,
a multi-gener. no,
It
just,
is,
you know,
but I think the seniors will be in it more than anybody.
okay.
That's all.
Understood, but I think there needs to be a story as to, okay, the seniors are going to do X, Y, and Z. Who else can potentially go in here? The Scouters, are they, you know, we've had conversations about putting some money into potentially fixing up Scouters. So I think we really need to have that a little bit more, you know, developed and sellable so that people get behind this project and say, yes, I'm excited about this. I'm excited to be able to, you know, go dance out on the patio and hear the music coming from the multi-purpose room. Right now, I think there's just too much, you know, I don't know, animosity is maybe not the right word, but there's definitely anxiety about it. And I just think that to make it reality, people need to be able to see themselves using it for something. As, you know, the idea of a potential pool league, okay, do we have, you know, a significant amount of people that want to play in billiards and go, you know, maybe even with soccer to have a bill, I just, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah, there
I
is a
think,
pool, there is a pool table there.
I think people need to see themselves using the
Yeah.
space.
Sure.
Before I came here, I was having a conversation with my 20-year-old son and my 18-year-old son, and they were saying, for what?
Yeah.
You know, so it's just, to me, I think we need to get
Yeah.
what is the for what answered. And
Well, I think you're
seniors,
going to have a lot of young people saying for what?
well,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, because there are fewer young people.
However-
they'll all become seniors at some point, but at 18 years old and 20 years
No,
old,
they're not thinking-
you're not
no, no,
thinking about
exactly.
using this, you know, in
Exactly.
40 years.
No,
So it's
exactly.
just-
No, you're absolutely right.
But the
You're
one
ab-
thing we shouldn't,
Yeah.
even though that's an excellent point, and we need to continuously tell the story, but we also can't allow for short-sight, well, preferably not allow for short-sightedness of what is today and what could be tomorrow.
Well, no, exactly.
And
like-
if you do build it, do you have the vision to accept that many things that may not be obvious today can present themselves in the future? So there's always going to be that balance.
I agree 1,000%, but I guess if we had a list of 12 different potential things that could happen here, you know, what type of committees, who can meet in here? Like, you know, I was on the soccer board for a long time. We met in the basement of the church. Would it be nice to meet in this, you know, new building? Sure, it would be great to meet in here, but that conference room isn't big enough for that board. So now do you go and say, okay, we want to go into the multi-purpose? You know, it's just kind of putting it into
Yeah.
the
Well, so
use.
maybe one of our tasks is to then reach out again, which the previous committee did, reach out again and say, okay, now we're talking about very potential reality. We have it. Now, how are you going to engage Committee A, Committee B, however many there are, so we can then get that data and say, yes, there's 7 other committees of various purposes, and they've all shown an interest that, yes, they can use the flex room, they can use the games, et cetera, which would then make the point to the council of the viability and the interest. So I guess that would be a good way to refresh ourselves.
I'm a firm believer in if you build it, they will come, because, you know, you see these buildings get built all over the place, and when they're building, it's like, what are they doing? But, you know, they're viable, most of them last, and, you know, most of them succeed. And, you know, look at what Cumberland's doing over at Diamond Hill. You know, that building is a beautiful build. You know, so once you start to see those kind of things, people start to get excited about it. And, you know, I think that's kind of what we need to do. We got to get excitement built somehow.
Well, I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, the co-chairs, if we shouldn't, I can't, but if somebody should make a motion that we reach back out to the list of organizations that may that should or would or could or do have an interest.
Even if they gave us like half a dozen ideas that they could potentially, see themselves using this building for, and it
Right.
just kind of helps give us some reality or some, life to it.
Oops, sorry. I don't want to speak on behalf of the Scouts. They're perfectly capable of speaking on behalf of themselves, but I think through the process, they had provided for us their program and what they were looking for. And as this program developed and the determination was made by the council to move the facility from Scouters to Halliwell, the Scouts chose not to participate at that
Right.
point. They're like,
Yeah.
we're going to stay where we are.
Right.
We like our building. And, again, I've had a conversation with the administrator as recently as today about Scouters and trying to look for grant money for Scouters. And with this building, what would that building be utilized for, right? So one of the things we discussed was potentially a portion of it being a food pantry. The other thing we discussed was, because of its location within a recreational facility, would be, Little League conferences, meetings, Scouts certainly would use it. North Smithfield football, lacrosse, although lacrosse was regional, I was informed today. So I said, well, how about a regional lacrosse and upgrading that building and using that for the youth sports center for meetings, just as you're talking about. Whether that happens or not, again, that's another question. But with regard to the Scouts, at least, they want to stay where they are, and they want to pursue that, improvements to that building.
So if that's, and again, no disrespect to the Scouts, but if that's where they're at, then I think we take Scouts out of the equation.
No, I don't
Because
disagree.
it just muddies the waters,
Well,
so if
That's why
Scouts
I-
are
that-
comfortable
yeah,
there.
and that's why
Yeah,
I
David,
said-
I can't
Yeah,
speak for them, but I think
yeah.
some of us were at the council meeting that they were at. Jeff, you were there, and they actually
Yeah.
declined from having anyone appointed to this
Right,
committee.
Yeah,
I
Josh
think that was-
Sylvia, yeah, because, he's got some knowledge, and I said, do you want to be on the building committee? He said, no, I'm going to stick with the Scouts.
Yeah.
We have our place, it's not being knocked down, and, oh, by the way, Little League does use it.
And-
They do use that, and a lot of the young,
And I'm-
the youth are there. The
And
little
I'm not-
ones are there.
Sorry, Linda,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm not discounting the
Yeah.
Scouts. I mean, we could certainly reach out to them and ask them, but I think,
Yeah.
I can presume I know what the
Can't
answer's
be
going to be.
everything to everybody.
No, exactly.
6,600 or
No,
60, it can't
yeah.
be,
And in talking about this discussion, senior centers are usually open, 8 to 5 or something like that, 5 days a week. So in the evenings, and I know the concern of the seniors is that whoever would be utilizing the facility on their downtime better clean it,
Well, yeah.
better maintain it. And that's where, and we didn't have this question, and moving forward, I don't know if it's for this committee to have the question, but it's certainly a question worth asking and asking the architect. What does staffing look like for a building like this? Do you have a dedicated maintenance person? You certainly have to have a building manager in there who's going to manage the schedule and make sure that the place is clean and things like that. Those would be the other questions that I think we would have moving forward that only make sense.
Yeah, and as far as Scouters Hall, when and if the seniors leave there, there's nobody there, because even with the Scouts, they're hardly there. And what we usually see, and it's nice to see, is the young moms with their little ones on their tricycles and bikes and things and riding around and playing in the sand that's there for the volleyball court. But yeah, there's nobody there. Little League goes there for signups and such. The municipal court is there twice a month. But other than that, when and if the seniors leave, because we're there 5 days a week, and when and if we leave there, it's going to be an empty building. So, it would be a special place for a food pantry for sure.
This is not a Scouters meeting, so I don't
Yeah.
want to get
I was
bogged down
just
in
about to say,
Scouters. I
can
will
you-
say that building was dedicated to Scouts and should stay as Scouts.
Yeah, well, and it is.
If they
yeah.
want to expand it and put a food pantry there, that's
Yeah.
fine, but as a Scout parent,
Yeah.
and as a former Little League chairperson,
Yeah.
president, but getting back to this building, I think the rooms as they're set up, the multipurpose room, the flex room, the conference room are built to accommodate different groups in town. Your sports leagues, as people who have been on sports leagues, conference room may not be big enough, but you could have signups, meetings in the flex room. You could partition off the multipurpose room. You could have this multipurpose room rentable on the weekend for baby showers. I am in a building currently that it is often rented. The town can decide how they want to rent it. If you need somebody there, if you want to give somebody a key, depending on what the access is to the rest of the building, that can be decided later. But there are plenty of options here to make this building usable for the seniors during the day, and then nights and weekends for other groups that will want to use it. Because I think Dave is right. I think once it's built, groups will realize that they now have a place to go, whether it's youth leagues, whether it's other clubs or other type of activities that maybe we're not even aware of that are in town, out of town. We can generate some revenue off of this, not that it's going to, maybe pay for a staff person. But I do agree with Dave that we have to have a narrative first. So maybe a little work on our end to kind of develop that narrative. And then I think that will also help us, as is one of our charges in our resolution, is to identify potential funding sources that once we have a narrative, we can then go to the town council, because I don't want to solicit any funding whatsoever until there's approval. Town council says okay, because we can't start doing that without official okay, but I think that helps us to generate interest in the building and funding in the building. However, if we are not able to secure enough grant money or any other funding sources without going out to bond, because I think as a collective group, I think and probably as town, that's an avenue we do not want to go down. I think developing a narrative of who's using the building and how it will be used will help us to go to corporations, other funding entities, and tell that story and get them to invest in this building as well. So, however, I think that needs to happen quicker, because it seems like we have a lot of things that we have to tackle: permitting, construction, but also funding source needs to happen. So.
And I would agree with you. Most senior centers, if you checked around in Northern Rhode Island, they're all used at night. Lincoln, that all the time it's used at night with people, just as you're saying. So one doesn't preclude the other. Just saying.
Quick question.
Coexist, you know what I mean?
If I could,
Yeah.
just to touch on Mr. Punchak's storytelling. I'm going to kick ourselves a little bit, or three of us a little bit. But back in August of 2022, we put together a pretty comprehensive report for the town council, which talks about community partnerships. And we list a good number of groups that we've talked to and explain what services the group provides, explain how they could assist in the formation of a community center, explain what their role could be once completed. And we have input from the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. We have input from Parks and Rec. We have input from Conservation Commission, the Public Art Advisory Committee. So we have right there 4 groups that we've already talked to that we can continue that discussion and that dialogue. And particularly with Mrs. Lilly here, we can certainly continue that conversation. We can share the plan with Parks and Rec and say, okay, we know the community garden's going to go over to the right of this building right now. How else could Parks and Rec potentially use the space? How else can the Public Art Advisory Committee use the space? How could they help furnish murals, artwork, historic pieces like we have here in the space? So we have a good base. I'll share this report with everybody, so then that way we can have, It was done almost 3 years ago, so I know that was a while. So we've gone through quite a bit.
Things change.
But, you know, just to even refresh that report to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to pick on Mrs. Lilly again. The community garden has been there for, you know, how many years now? 4 years. So we're going on 5 years. What have we learned? What might they need for continued support for that community garden? What have they wished for? I know you've talked about having cooking classes after you have a harvest and canning and understanding how, you know, from farm to table situations. You know, that's a good prime example of what the activities could continue to be in there.
So can
I had a
say
quick question. Remember back when we were doing the master plan, the idea of interacting with outdoor activities unrelated to the building. And then we, at some point, decided that maybe we would just have an outbuilding, if you will, that would only be accessible for people using the track or the trails. Is that the way you envision it, where that the allocation of the 1 million or the design for the outdoor activities does not interact with this building? Is that where direction where we were going?
That's the direction we were going. The corridor here has the opportunity to be closed off, so if you wanted to, on a weekend, open the
Yeah.
bathrooms, you could, and they couldn't get in anywhere else in the building. So that
Just
was-
put a door at the other end,
that
yeah.
was the law.
So we're still thinking that the building may be multi-purpose so that people only using the outdoor activities have access to the building.
Community gardeners that might need a restroom.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
that was the idea.
So I have a question. So if Miss
I'll
Lilly
call
wants
you
to,
tomorrow. Yeah.
oh, bye. If Miss Lilly wants to have some sort of a class when that table to farm and all that stuff, this kitchen only says it has a pantry and a cooler. Is there gonna be, the right size sinks, the deep basin sinks that they need? Will there be an oven? Will there be, so I do the aging well, excuse me. When I go to Woonsocket, I can use all their stoves. My meal site's over at the Meadows, where my food comes hot to me, I have a steam table, I'm all set. Would there be a steam table for the people to use? Because I don't see like anything that says a sink or, the cooler would be a refrigerator type cooler, like a huge cooler?
I
Need a
think
commercial
these are
kitchen.
all great questions,
Thank you.
Yeah.
and that will be further developed as we move forward.
Okay.
So if there are things that you are expecting to see, I know Joel explained that there'd be it's a commercial grade kitchen.
Commercial kitchen is what we
So-
need, yeah.
So
Me
if
too.
if there are particular
Yeah.
pieces of equipment that you think will be beneficial more than others, then I think we should have that discussion.
Right.
So then that way, you know, if you need a 6-burner stove or a, 8-burner stove, or you just need a 4-burner stove,
Right.
if we do need steam tables, well, obviously.
3-bay sink.
Yeah,
Well,
the three-bay
that's
sink,
what
yeah.
the 3-bay
3-bay
sink is gonna
yeah.
come with, because it's commercial grade.
Commercial grade.
It's gonna need to be reviewed by the Department of Health.
That's
So-
right.
So we
Yeah.
needed 3-bay sink
We need a
regardless.
3-bay sink,
So
yeah.
it's things like that we
And a
can certainly have a
dishwasher.
discussion about.
Because if you decide someday that you can rent these out and people can use a little space and they would have to use a kitchen, that's where you can step back as from a catering point of view.
Mhm.
You can have your thing catered, you can not allow them to use the gas so that you don't have to worry about someone using the gas or turning on the ovens and
Mhm.
not shutting them
Yeah.
off. You can have your baby shower, you can have
You could have a
cold
catered
sandwiches,
catered
you can have it
event. Yeah,
catered
sure you
there,
could.
And you
Yeah.
can have it delivered in there and, but I want to make sure that's like that because that's what I do. That's my thing.
That's your zone.
That's my zone.
Well, and that's
my
important
zone.
for, no matter who is
Right, so,
using
yeah, no matter
this
for
place,
who.
you need a good
Yep.
commercial kitchen.
You sure do.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Mhm. So then I'm just gonna let you talk to them, what you need.
I want gold handles on the refrigerators, please.
Nope, that's where I'll stop you.
No, but it just needs to be perfect, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely
If
agree.
you're gonna spend it and you wanna be able to rent it out, it needs to be up to par, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
So,
Okay. We've had a long roundabout discussion a little bit this evening, so,
We did, we discussed everything.
I know. So Joel and Jeremy, what would you expect our next steps to be? Or ideally, what would we be looking at? Because I know we talked about a couple of different iterations of the plan. I know on your recommendation, we should move rather quickly to make sure that we're not up against the wall with everything that's going on in the world right now. So for next steps, would it be appropriate to say that, you know, in 2 weeks, we could have iterations, some various iterations of plans to review and discuss?
Sort of based on what we've talked about, using this as a kernel still today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they'll get started on the DEM stuff.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll let you have that conversation with PAR to
Yeah.
continue that, to start that process.
Yeah.
Certainly keep Mark in the loop on that, too. We have a little bit more administrative backup
Yeah.
for this committee than we did previously, so if there's anything that you need on the town side, please reach out to Mark.
Mm.
I know Ray Pendergast, he's the head of DPW, he's also a part of this committee, as well as, I believe, our building inspector, and his name escapes me right now, Leo Cody.
Leo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I get a clarification? Where are we with the 1 million? Is that it, would that be a change order to the design? I lost track of that. Have we been authorized? This is a building committee, but where is the council? Are we just ignoring the exterior
No, the
site
one
work?
the
So
1
we got
million
that.
is still
That-
in our,
that
is
included
in our.
in it. Yeah.
So
The
so
resolution
my
included.
question is, we're going to prioritize the building design and then, or slowly start on the,
Well, we need to get the site going because that access road needs improvement, the guardrails are.
so that design work is going to start as well.
That should start.
The
yeah.
access road.
But is there
Yeah.
another million for that site work? Is that what you're saying?
There is a $1 million grant that's
That
included.
was
so-
1.5, no?
So it's
No, that
4
one
and
was
1. But that can't
was
be.
1.5.
So I guess we also probably should articulate through the administration, you know, the approach road. If you're gonna get bureaucrats involved, the dollars for the approach road, is that from the million or is that from the 4? Because clearly the approach road serves the structure.
Yep.
But you could argue, if you wanted to, that those costs could be assigned
No, and I,
to site.
so I know the administrator has a game, a big picture game plan on how all these grants are gonna be applied and how they're gonna be applied. So
Right.
what I'll do is at the next meeting, I'll either ask Mark to be prepared, come prepared to speak to them, or I'll ask Scott to be here in
Yeah.
person, so he can walk us through that. Because I don't want, he's spoken with me a couple times, and he's given me his kind of perspective on how he wants to approach it, but I don't want to speak for him and misspeak, and then be quoted one way, and then it just turn into something else, so.
And the last thing is we need to at least keep it somewhere as a priority, is the idea of trying to determine the best way for the second egress. I know the fire chief was quite specific in saying he would want one or require one. So I think at some point, you should give a little more thought. I know we talked about it, there's only one or two avenues available, but we should give it a little bit more thought to see what issues would have to be overcome to make that a viable, one of those two a viable option.
You need
Yeah,
an egress.
and,
Yeah.
and if I recall, that was for the bigger picture, the final end game project, not the initial phase 1. But why don't we get clarification from him?
No, if it's gonna be an occupied building,
You
he
need
wants-
egress.
he
Yeah,
wants a
he
second
wants an
means to get
emergency
there. He made
egress,
it crystal clear
definitely.
when I met
Okay.
him.
Yeah,
All right.
definitely,
All
yeah.
somebody would have to do is obstruct.
One
the
side and
main
you're
entrance
stuck,
and
yeah.
Police and fire.
Can't get
So
in.
he was adamant in saying
Yeah.
Okay.
that that's what he
Yeah.
would want.
We
And
ran
talked
into-
about it,
yeah.
so- But we have limited options, but I didn't want to wait till the 11th hour and have it become
Mhm.
a massive roadblock.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah, very good point.
Can I just ask that there always be an access to the garden during construction?
Sure.
What?
There may be some dust mitigation that you might have to do.
Do,
No, I mean, honestly, that's just a function of construction, but I think it would be fairly easy for the documents to be drawn so that that's considered sacred.
zoning wise, this is not a permitted use in that zoning district, correct?
Yes, it is.
I thought that the master plan said it was not.
The zoning has since been revised by council to include it.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
if you look at the district use, and then actually, prior to the council's revision of the use table, it was allowed in the RA, but not the REA. REA and RA split right where the building's going. So you're allowed to have an RA use within 25 or 50 feet within that. So we were in good shape for that. But I think since then, the council has revised it so that community centers are allowed in REA zones.
Right.
I'm speaking from memory, so if people are
Yeah.
fact-checking me at home, it's
No pickleball.
some of those. It's, we've looked at it. So I might be misspeaking, but it has been looked at.
Interesting. All right. So we
Okay.
don't have really anything that we need to bring to the council, right?
No
No,
recommendations
not-
at this
nothing-
point, so
Nothing from this meeting.
we'll make sure we have Scott or Mark present for that. So we will plan, as we did with our formation meeting, that we'll have our next meeting in 2 weeks, which it falls on the March 20th.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we're in spring, exactly. So we'll
Oh,
look
yeah.
forward to seeing you folks then. If you have any presentations that you want to send to us beforehand, just shoot us over an email and we can distribute those. And then I'll knock on wood for Carl's sake, so we can have things projected and go from there. All right, so thank you
Thank
both
you.
for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we don't have any recommendations to make, I just do want to note that recommendations to council is going to be just a standing line item in our agenda. So if there is something that comes up at any of our meetings, we will just be able to have that opportunity. Not anticipating that we'll make recommendations every time, but I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to do so.
No, it's important that we have that on there. I agree, definitely.
And I'll make sure we have minutes for the next meeting to review. I forgot to put it on this agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, can we also, I just wanted to also, if the chairs agree, the idea of assigning dollar values to the rooms, if
Yeah,
if everyone thinks that's a viable, it gives us another option for fundraising.
Right. What I'd like to do is finalize a plan and then know what the square footages are. And then when we move forward, we can get that, we can certainly, and that can be arbitrary too. We don't have to get a direct cost or anything like that.
Yeah, whatever we want to
Yeah.
assign.
Sell bricks for a patio outside with people's names on them.
You can do that
It's
too.
like Disney World.
Mhm. All right. Well, this has been a fantastic first meeting of the Halliwell Multi-Generational Building Committee meeting. If there's no further discussion on any of the agenda items, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Hallelujah.